Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation with a changemaker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable, carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. You know, the clothing we wear is a massive source of carbon emissions and landfill waste. The World Economic Forum reports that the fashion industry emits up to 10% of annual human emissions, though other estimates run as low as 2%. McKinsey & Company says that less than 1% of the cotton produced annually is recycled and suggests that keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius requires that we make clothes last longer and that we embrace reuse and rental programs. Reusing clothing is an important step to reducing our carbon and waste footprint. And according to GlobalData, a research firm, reuse shopping has grown from almost no revenue in 2012 to $14 billion in 2021. It's projected that it will reach $51 billion by 2026. So we're going to need a guide to the exploding world of clothing reuse options. Our guest today is Sarah Pinner. She's co-founder and CEO of Beni, which makes a plugin for Google's Chrome browser that helps shoppers find reuse alternatives to new clothing. We've been testing the Beni plugin, which can understand what product you're looking at on an e-commerce site and suggest used alternatives from other sites. For example, when viewing a $129 Patagonia fleece jacket, Beni showed us more than a dozen similar used Patagonia jackets ranging in price from $46 to $104. Beni takes the shopper to the reuse site with a single click, keeping the original window open so it's easy to make a comparison. There are other factors, of course, such as the CO2 emissions created when a used product is shipped that we need to better understand. But Beni tells us they're working on how to calculate the full benefits of buying reused. There's a lot to talk about, so let's dive in. You can learn more about the Beni browser plugin at www.joinbeni. That's Join Beni is no space, no dash, and Beni is spelled B-E-N-I, joinbeni.com. Welcome to the show, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Glad to hear it. You know, prior to Beni, you were at Imperfect Foods, the grocery service that helps reduce food waste by selling less than perfect produce and rescued food. And I wanted to ask, what did you learn from that experience that made you want to become a broker of reuse clothing information?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one of the big things I learned at Imperfect was about meeting people where they are when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to bringing more people into the circular economy and accelerating the circular economy. Imperfect does a really great job in their branding and in their product, where it's not saying you have to be like the most sustainable person in the world to fight food waste. You just have to buy this box, and you're actually saving money as well, because that's the beautiful thing about the circular economy and reducing waste is that waste is expensive. And so for a shopper, they don't have to identify necessarily as a food waste warrior to be involved in it. And I think that's very similar to the approach with Beni, which is really about meeting shoppers where they are and making the world of resale and the world of the circular economy really accessible to them.
Well, and that really raises the point of you're not trying to change people's behavior, but you're trying to justify a different choice within an well-understood behavior, like shopping. How does Beni work? What's it looking for in addition to finding similar clothing? So as a user, what can I count on as advice from Beni?
Yeah, I love that way of framing it as sort of advice. We sort of see Beni as that friend that will go with you shopping and go with you to the thrift store to help you find that perfect item for you. So the way Beni works is that when you're shopping on a familiar site, so let's say Levi's and you're looking for a Levi's jean jacket and you click on Beni, we will find the same or similar jacket wherever it exists secondhand online. And so what the technology is doing is it's capturing the attributes of the product on the page, and then it's comparing it to attributes in our database. The really fascinating thing about secondhand is that the data is all one-of-one garments, right? So the data is very messy and interesting. And so we're using a lot of different AI to surface the relevant alternatives to the user. And then on top of that, there's ways that users can set parameters for what Beni is surfacing to them. So there's filters for size and color and the platform, if they want a peer-to-peer platform or a managed marketplace platform. And then as we go, we're starting to incorporate other things like, is it returnable? Is the item authenticated? And all of these things are really to help shoppers, help bring the right inventory to the right shoppers, and then help them navigate the experience of shopping secondhand, which can be really overwhelming for a lot of people.
It's interesting to me when you search. So I've been searching on things that happen to be plaid. Maybe it's just a thrift shopping thing, but it doesn't show me exactly the same plaids. It shows me other plaids. And it's more like shopping in a thrift store where everything on the rack is a little different, but the same, instead of everything being exactly the same. So it's very much like that the wild, wild west shopping experience that you're describing. Now, what e-commerce sites does Beni recognize now and provide alternatives for? I noticed on a couple of sites that you invited me to add it.
Yeah, exactly. So we work already on about 800 sites online, and we can add a new site really quickly. And so exactly what you said, when you're using Beni and you click on it, if we don't yet support that site, you just click one button and then we will support it. And really that's just because we want to only be working on through e-commerce sites and brands that our shoppers want. And so it's super easy for us to add it. And at this point, we just don't even know which sites to add because there's just so many brands out there. So if you find one that you love, please tell us to add it and we will.
Okay, so you're crowdsourcing how you bring in new e-commerce partners.
Yeah, because we've already really supported all the brands that we know off the top of our head, all the 800. And so now it's about finding, you may love that one small brand. And so tell us and we'll add support for it.
So what happens? What happens when you do that? Do you do some sort of comprehensive crawl of that site and start understanding what they do?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Actually, we just need to understand where the information exists on the product page. So as I mentioned, the way that Beni works is that we understand the attributes of the product that you're looking at. So we can find similar at like the plaid example you used. And so we need to understand like where is the image and where is the product description, but it's really simple to do that from those sites.
Now, at Earth911, we're working on the problem of how do you characterize the recyclability of a product, which is much more complex than recycling a material. Have you explored how to articulate the environmental benefits of buying new versus resale in specific instances, which must be a profoundly difficult challenge?
It is a very difficult challenge. And, again, going back to my experience at Imperfect, I was the head of sustainability there, started their sustainability team. And there's so, as you know, so many different elements to what is quote unquote sustainable, what is recyclable, and in which context, for example. And so when we think about generally our approach to sustainability and our approach to the product is always progress over perfection. So as we start to this journey of helping make resale really accessible, the first step is obviously the product and bringing the inventory to the shopper. And now what we're doing, which we're actually launching next week, is an initial pass at sort of explaining the avoided carbon and water impact of purchasing an item secondhand. And right now, the way we're doing it is at a product category level, and it's using existing life cycle analysis data from Green Story and ThredUp because it's very, it's well used in the industry. But there's so much more nuance that we're going to start to incorporate in that. So one is with avoided emissions, for example, the production of the new, it depends on like what type of production was used in the production of the new item or the secondhand item to understand how much carbon are you avoiding by not purchasing that Patagonia jacket versus that jacket from Zara. And then there's the shipping, for example, which we're starting to incorporate as well, which is where was that new item coming from? Where is that secondhand item coming from? And so really the challenge in the next step is just understanding what data do we have access to? How do we get data and how do we continue to refine that calculation, but really at least keeping the heart of helping shoppers understand that by buying something through resale, generally speaking, resale is, a more sustainable choice in the sense that you're keeping that item in use for longer.
That's absolutely true. There's no doubt that buying reused is more sustainable, but the most controllable factor to lower the overall impact of any purchase in this case would be the shipping. Have you looked at how to regionalize or even localize Beni referrals so that you can minimize the shipping involved in moving a product from one place to another?
Yeah, we definitely have. And again, it comes down to what data we get from our resale partners, whether we have the seller location for certain partners, but it's definitely a solvable problem. And what we're excited about is that it sort of generally fits into what we're trying to do at Beni, which is get the right resale inventory to the right shopper. And that both means, is this a product that is relevant to what you actually want? But it also means if there's, 4 different products that are equally relevant, we want to right. surface the one that's closest to you. Instead of the shopper, what they would have had to do without Beni is open up all those 4 different resale sites, find all those 4 items, compare across them where the seller is and where the shipping is. And so it really highlights the value of Beni being an aggregator and a curator and getting to do things like regionalizing as well.
Now, another facet of a marketplace, in your market, it's interesting, you're a meta marketplace rather than destination marketplace, is the ability to bring in new participants, which of course both spreads the market and the message about it and improves the impacts. Have you explored how to support resale entrepreneurs, people who maybe are just looking at all the waste around them and thinking, I could figure out a solution for my community or for this type of clothing?
Yeah, I think that when we think about Beni, and our kind of overarching goal is to accelerate the adoption of re-commerce by making resale really accessible to everyone everywhere. And that may mean that it's purchasing through Beni, but it may mean that with a shopper using Beni, they're starting to think about secondhand as they're making purchase decisions. And so it's accelerating the adoption more broadly, which will help kind of indirectly re-commerce, in different pockets. And I think also what we try to do in our brand and in our kind of marketing is always support and highlight resale entrepreneurs in wherever they are. So whether it's a local seller or, a platform online. And then I think the last piece there is also, not only is it challenging to find and buy things secondhand to purchase, it's also a relatively challenging experience to sell things secondhand online. Right. And so we're also thinking about, with our unique position in the market of having so many different connections to different players, how can we support individuals in selling items secondhand more easily to get more inventory into the market?
This is a whole area where e-commerce is continuing to evolve, and the new commerce sites like Amazon are now into live selling. They'll have individuals who are experts or authorities in a particular topic come on and pitch stuff. Now, I can't imagine pitching an individual reused item, but I can imagine, a vintage clothing retailer in Fresno having a more live experience in addition to the referral through Beni. Is that the kind of innovation you're talking about in the future? How do we need to change reuse shopping?
Oh, that's a big question. I think the live selling is really interesting. And then a lot of our platform partners, so Poshmark, for example, is incorporating live selling on their site. And so if you are, a vintage clothing retailer or you're a sort of power seller, you can go on and exactly to your point, you can say, I have, 30 vintage sweatshirts and I'm going to live sell them. I think that when we think about where Beni fits is that really works, I think, for people who are very committed to resale, right? They want to buy all their things through resale. They're going to go on the live shopping and get that vintage sweatshirt. But there's a big gap of people who are sort of like, yeah, I get it. It's cheaper, it's more sustainable, but I'm not going to change the way I shop just to access resale. Or I'm not going to change the way I quote unquote return items or resell items just to be in part of it. And that's, the research shows there's 93% of people who are open to buying secondhand, but only close to 50% who do. So really that's where Beni fits, which is about sort of bridging the gap between the e-commerce experience that exists today and the re-commerce experience, and making it a really seamless thing where if somebody wants to procure a jacket, it's super easy for them to have, both the new and used version exactly at their fingertips. And so that's really where we see the future of re-commerce going, which is making it a very normal part of our shopping experience.
Now, and you've mentioned already that you can add as a customer sites that you would like Beni to be able to analyze. What if I'm a vintage clothing company or even an individual who wants to get listed? How do they do that?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us. There's a partnerships link on our website. It's partnerships.joinbeni.com. And right now, because we're an e-commerce tool, the listings have to be listed online. But we want to partner with every resale marketplace, big and small, and we already have 30 marketplaces, and some are small and some are big. And so if you reach out to us, we can quickly get you integrated into Beni. And yeah, like I said, our goal is to really bring the entire world of resale directly to our shoppers. And what we've seen is just there's so much amazing inventory out there that's sort of hidden in a way in these different pockets of the market. And so we're really excited about being able to give more visibility to wherever that inventory exists to the right shoppers.
This is a great place to take a break in a fascinating conversation. We're going to be right back. We're back to continue the conversation with Sarah Pinner, co-founder and CEO of the new reused clothing browser plugin called Beni. Sarah, you have a logged-in experience in the browser in the plugin. So, in addition to seeing the listings, I can log in. What happens when I log in, and what are you thinking about building in the logged-in experience?
Yeah, so the logged-in experience is really designed to help you, help us help you navigate the world of resale. So a few things that we have in there is, one, you can favorite certain items that come up on Beni. So, sometimes we're not ready to make a purchase at that exact moment, but you want to come back to it. Of course, with resale, you never know if it's going to be sold. That's the beauty of everything being one of one. But you can favorite items. They're listed in Beni. A new feature we just launched is the ability to save a search. And so what will happen is, let's say you really love jeans from Boyish. And when you use Beni, we're not coming up with the best inventory. You can save a search, and we'll continue to search for those jeans that you're looking for and email you with results. And that, again, resale is beautiful and complicated in the sense that when you look right then, there may not be any inventory, but tomorrow there may be your perfect jean. And we want to make sure we're constantly kind of getting you those results. And then there's kind of other ways. As I mentioned earlier, we have filters in the extension, but some filters you want to set sort of permanently, like your sizes. So when you're logged in, you can set a size profile so that always when you're looking, searching through Beni, we're only showing you sizes that make sense for you. And as we go forward, we're going to continue to have some of those parameters that you can set where you can really curate your own experience shopping with Beni. So you're really only seeing the results that make sense for you.
In terms of curating your own experience, have you thought about creating a My Closet capability so that you could also catalog the clothing that you might also ultimately want to resell or rent?
You hit the nail on the head. That is something that we're working on. And I love that you came to that because, the beauty of being an extension and a plugin on your browser is that we're with you wherever you're shopping. And we know that, our goal is not for everybody to purchase everything secondhand and never buy anything else. So exactly to your point, wherever you purchase something online, we want to capture that to make it really easy for you to get it back into the circular economy.
It's interesting. Getting it back into the circular economy is a very simple thing to say, but it's really hard because we have to understand where everything is. Now, you're a browser extension right now, but in order to be truly part of my life, you might need to be an app. Are you considering whether or not you need to build an app that is my partner in reuse shopping?
Yeah. So right now we just also launched on Safari. And so we're on both
Oh, you did?
Safari
Okay.
desktop and mobile. Yeah. So it's not an app right now. It is an extension, but it is on your mobile Safari app. And so similarly, if you are shopping online, you can use all of the same features, favorited, save search, in the future, my closet, on your Safari browser on your phone. But there's definitely ways that we're considering in the future, also having a more standalone experience for Beni's, a searchable site or an app, for people who want to engage with Beni more deeply. But again, right now our goal is wherever you're shopping, we're going to be there with you.
Now, you have a really interesting student ambassador program, and Gen Z is leading the way on a lot of this stuff. They're just naturally more oriented to reuse. These folks coach or evangelize to the thrift curious, and they're called the Beni Band. How did they describe the value of fashion in their clothing choices different than older shoppers? What kind of changes are you seeing generationally?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's fascinating because, one of the reasons for starting Beni was that there was clearly a shift where people understood the value of secondhand, and almost there's this shift towards people feeling embarrassed not to buy secondhand.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sense of like, it's, especially with younger shoppers, it's very cool to find something that's unique. It's very cool to shop secondhand. And also because it aligns with a lot of their stated values around sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, they also, the research shows, which is really fascinating, is that Gen Z is the most vocal about, shopping secondhand, about shopping more sustainably, but they still purchase through, for example, fast fashion really regularly. And a lot of the reason is because fast fashion is more accessible and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal with Beni, and what they love about Beni, and what they want to why they want to tell their friends about Beni, is because it's a way to make thrifting accessible and bring the affordability really directly to them. And so I think that's why they're so excited to get to be a part of the Beni Band, because they're already having these conversations with each other of like, oh, I found this at a thrift store, but it feels sort of exclusive if people don't feel comfortable going to a thrift store, don't have the time to shop on eBay online. And so Beni really fills that gap.
Look, I wear clothes that are 20 years old. Rather than shopping, because I find shopping a pain. You're hitting my generation's problems right on the head of the nail. But how do you see shopping in re-commerce evolving for older generations? What do we need to do to bring more people along?
Yeah, so, I think with Beni, our goal, as I said, is to meet people where they are and help them make the best decisions for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we evolve this tool, our goal is that it's in line with how people shop. So for younger generations, they will probably use it more to find that like fun, funky thing that's in fashion, but they can't afford the really fashionable one. And so they want to find the vintage version of that or something like that. And so it's a little bit more of a platform for discovery. And there's ways that we can make sure, Beni, to your point about the plaid, there's some discovery elements there. As we get into sort of older generations, a lot of what they use Beni for is really for that curation, saying, I love this. For example, someone in my family, she's an older generation. She said, I love these boots. I've had these boots for 20 years and they're falling apart. I want to find if these boots exist secondhand online. And we were able to find that. And so it's about, there's different ways. There's sort of a spectrum of that curation to that discovery. And I think the older generation is more looking for, I'm comfortable with this brand. I'm comfortable with this product. If you can find me one secondhand that's cheaper and really high quality, I'm happy to buy it.
That's interesting. So what you're describing is for younger people, it's the novelty of the shopping and what they're buying. And for the older shopper, it's about nostalgia in a lot of cases. That I've been looking for the sweater I'm wearing, which I have 5 of, and they're wearing out. And so it's, for me, I trust that and I want more of it, but it isn't made anymore. Interesting. So let me ask a question about advice Beni gave me. So I was shopping Nordstrom.com using Beni. There was a new product, but the new product was 70% off. So all of the reuse options were actually more expensive. And I couldn't see any environmental information because Nordstrom doesn't share any, and therefore there was nothing to compare. So here's the question. What's your advice in a situation like that? How would you choose if you did see a brand new product that was less expensive than the reused one and you had no additional information? Is it okay?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that the kind of is it okay, quote unquote, question is definitely one that we think a lot about, because I think on a highest level, our goal is to build a world where at least 1 in 5 garments are created through circular business models. And that comes from McKinsey's kind of report around where we need to be by 2030. Yeah. 1 in 5 is a lot more than where we are now, but it's also only 1 in 5. And so there's got to be 4 items that you purchase new for whatever reason. It's something you want to invest in. It's something that you don't feel comfortable purchasing through secondhand. And so in that case, I think about 2 things. One is, what is this item that I'm looking at new? Is this an item that I want to invest in, and I'm gonna purchase it? I don't find awesome secondhand items. I think it makes sense to save some money and purchase it secondhand, but also starting to take into account, to your point, the other, maybe the price is a little bit higher secondhand, but as we have information around the environmental savings, take that into account. As you're looking at different options in Beni, we're starting to have, for example, what I said, kind of these tags to show if it's authenticated, if it's returnable, so you can help kind of make that decision better. But again, generally speaking, when we look towards the future and we look at the impact we want to have, we want to see of, 10 out of 10 items that used to be bought new, at least 2 of those items are now bought secondhand, really that progress over perfection. And so it doesn't need to be all or nothing. If there's that one item that you want to invest in and it's on sale, I think it's okay to do that.
And look, I generally agree with your underlying statement earlier that it's about progress, not perfection. We have to take those steps. The phrase that you just used that's really important, though, and this is ultimately what made me decide to do nothing when I was shopping Nordstrom, is the question of, do I really want to invest in this? And it was the opportunity to compare and think about that allowed me to not buy 2, which is another choice that McKinsey doesn't gesture at as much because, of course, they sell all their research to the retailers. But 1 in 5 could also be 1 in 5, including the things I just decided not to buy.
Yeah. And I just wrote a kind of blog post around this time of holiday shopping. And what I think about when I'm making purchases is sort of what gives my life a sense of abundance, right? Because I think people think of like abundance and sustainability as counter to each other, but you can make, your purchase decisions and you can make your decisions around your life there's ways to get the things that make you feel a sense of abundance in a way that's sustainable. Part of that might be, I don't care about, having this thing in my life. And so even though it's a quote unquote unmissable sale, I don't want to invest in it. I don't want it in my life. But maybe it is, I really love having really nice candles and these are on sale. So I'm going to buy some. Or I really want to feel awesome in a well-fitted black coat. I don't care if it's new. And that's where something like Beni comes in. So I think it really is about helping people think about their purchases and giving them a framework for what being intentional around shopping means and what the alternatives are, instead of just sort of saying those things like high level to people. No one really knows what to do with that,
Well, the thing is, our economy has been reflexive and it needs to become reflective.
Yeah.
And the information you're starting to surface is really all about the first steps towards those reflections, which we're just not accustomed to performing before we make those decisions. You mentioned the holiday season. Are you seeing a lot of people shop using Beni during the holiday season?
It's a good question. We're definitely seeing people shop more. So seeing more people, shop during the season. It's interesting because we've had a lot of conversations with other people in the industry, Trove, for example, and others around this particular holiday season and the idea of gifting something secondhand. And a lot of the research shows that I think it's 70+% of people are open to receiving a secondhand gift, but very few people give it because, the cultural norm. And so we're trying to, in a lot of our conversations around this time, encourage people to consider buying at least, one gift secondhand because you can save money. Obviously, there's a lot of inflation right now, and kind of encouraging people, like, people love receiving great gifts, and it's okay if it was pre-love.
So, what I would suggest for the login experience then is a wish list that I could share with friends, because that would give the permission to send me the used item rather than buy me something new. Not that
I love that.
Buy me a gift, but.
No, I love that. We are, you're hitting the nail on the head. We are using kind of the saved search functionality around this time as sort of a wish list. But I think that exactly that. I mean, that's what I'm doing with my family is I'm asking, they're sending me both secondhand items, but even, again, the beauty of Beni is they're saying, I want this, I like this Patagonia jacket. They can just send me the link to the new item. And then I can use Beni to find the secondhand item. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's that ability just for us to start to give permission to think in terms of re-commerce.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all sorts of social or virality benefits of that kind of a feature where I start to, Mitch is open and already thinking about re-commerce. It just introduces that to all my friends and family who might never have even considered it, although my family's fairly progressive that way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's, it kind of mirrors back to the conversation around going with your friend to the thrift store and, you find something for them. You find something that's amazing, but doesn't fit you or your lifestyle. You can share it with your friend. And there's something really beautiful about that and about that with re-commerce versus just, this thing, is online, I buy it, whatever. And I think there's a lot. I'm really excited for just growing Beni and growing the community around Beni that makes re-commerce kind of that beautiful experience.
So how do folks follow along as you grow Beni?
Yeah, so the best way would be initially to download the extension. So you can go to joinbeni.com. You can get it on Chrome and Safari. Like I said, if you're on Safari, the link will be to Safari. And then the best way to stay up to date with feature updates and others is to sign up for our newsletter on our website or to follow us on Instagram at join_Beni. Great.
Sarah, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful conversation.
We've been speaking with Sarah Pinner. She's the co-founder and CEO of Beni, which makes a reused clothing plugin for Google Chrome and Apple's Safari browsers. You can learn more about Beni at www.joinbeni, no space, no dash, and Beni is spelled BENI, joinbeni.com. Meeting people where they are and offering new options without asking them to change their behavior is going to be critical to accelerating the transition to a more sustainable economy. Clothing re-commerce is already a fast-growing industry with clear environmental benefits, but as of 2018, only 14.7% of clothing was recycled, according to the EPA. And the reality, based on the research that we've done here at Earth911, is that most donated and recycled clothing is warehoused because there's simply not enough processing capacity to recycle most of the material collected. Sarah's point that we can discover a sense of abundance based on choosing sustainable alternatives to buying new products, whether that's a blender or a jacket, is crucial to understanding how to evolve consumer values. Choosing reuse and the environmental benefits that come with it needs to be popular, celebrated, and touted. So here's a question. When will events like the Metropolitan Opera Gala, the Met Gala, see a celebrity wear a used dress? When will it be cool to be seen in a dress someone else wore to the event 3 years earlier? The passion for thrift shopping we see in younger generations is the light at the end of that tunnel, but we haven't seen that breakthrough moment yet. It would be wonderful to see a celebrity show up in a used dress or a used tuxedo, anything. Let's take those steps. Would you take a few minutes to share this show or any of the more than 350 episodes of sustainability in your ear with your friends, family, your neighbors, your coworkers? How about you walk into a retail location or a thrift shop and share this show with them? You folks are the amplifiers that spread the ideas that lead to a less wasteful world. Please let folks know that you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other fine purveyors of podcast goodness. We would really appreciate your support in helping get the word out. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. We'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.